And we're back. It is Friday, January 25th. You're here with TJ and Emily. We have to have music breaks because we have to dance.
Gotta do a little dancing, even if it's chair dancing.
Absolutely. We're going to jump into some international stories. More about Venezuela, which we also talked about with Tom from Talk Media News. But Nicolas Maduro's opponent has declared himself the interim president of Venezuela. Juan Guaido is backed by the U.S. and several Latin American countries. Trump formally recognized Guaido as Venezuela's leader on Wednesday. This led Nicolas Maduro to break relations with the United States. Wednesday, he gave American diplomats 72 hours to leave the country, and the United States State Department stated it would not comply with the order. Venezuela now runs the risk of having two parallel governments that are both recognized internationally, neither of which have control over state functions. A definitive change of government rests on the Venezuelan military alliance with a leader. So far, they have stood by Maduro. On Thursday, the U.S. ordered the evacuation of non-essential diplomatic personnel from Venezuela. However, the embassy will remain open amid fears of a potential clash with Nicolas Maduro's regime. Juan Guaido said Thursday that he would consider granting Nicolas Maduro amnesty if the dictator helps return Venezuela to democracy. Maduro has, so far, shown no indication that he's willing to give up power.
Okay, I don't want to minimize what's going on in the United States, but that is a constitutional crisis.
Absolutely.
When you have two people saying, I'm the boss. I don't exactly understand why the State Department is not complying with the order to get their diplomats out of, like after 72 hours, they'll just say, oh, okay, you can stay. No, they're going to be expelled. Right. And therefore, they and their families are in some level of danger.
Absolutely.
That's kind of throwing them under the bus, State Department, in my personal view. Otherwise, I must confess to near total ignorance of the situation. I couldn't tell you which of Guaido or Maduro is the better option. Obviously, if Trump is backing Guaido, that gives me pause. But as Tom noted, the Maduro election was not seen as without flaws or without corruption. So it's maybe there is no good guy. But there's sure a bunch of oil underneath both of them, and that colors any of the decisions or motivations that we have diplomatically. So
True.
I wish I had a foreign policy expert to explain it to me. Are you a foreign policy expert?
I'm afraid I'm not.
Oh, darn. Well, we had Tom Scuteri, and he helped us out a little bit.
True.
Okay, now we can go across the ocean. I was so excited. I'm headed to Hawaii in a couple of weeks. So
nice.
I've got, transcontinental flights in my head. In the Congo, which is in Africa, which is across the Atlantic Ocean from the United States, the inauguration marked the first peaceful transfer of power in 60 years. The Democratic Republic of the Congo is finally living up to its name and has experienced its first peaceful transfer of power since declaring independence from Belgium in 1960. On Thursday, opposition leader Félix Tshisekedi was sworn in as president after winning a surprise election earlier this month. Tshisekedi, his inauguration comes after more than 2 turbulent years of election delays. However, there remain lingering allegations of fraud on suspicions that Joseph Kabila, who served as president for 18 years, cut a deal to make Tshisekedi his successor. Congo's Electoral Commission declared Tshisekedi the official victor, but the Catholic Church, one of the few trusted institutions in the African country, there's irony, determined that another opposition candidate, Martin Fayulu, was the, quote, clear winner. If I have little understanding of the Venezuelan situation, I probably have even less understanding, unfortunately, of the Congo situation. But a peaceful transfer of power is always a good thing.
Yep. The work on elections around the world is critical now more than ever. There's just 2 stories that illustrate that.
And we take a quick flight back to Cascadia.
Let's do local.
Into the Supreme Court of
Your
Oregon.
backyard. If you're in Oregon, I suppose, because we have listeners all over the world.
Salem is my backyard. It's about 30 minutes south of LA.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oregon Supreme Court agrees to expedite hearing of campaign finance reform case. On Wednesday, the Oregon Supreme Court agreed to bypass the Oregon Court of Appeals and directly decide a case about the constitutionality of Multnomah County Measure 26-184, coming to us. It came to us in 2016. The measure establishes limits on campaign contributions in races for Multnomah County public office. Also requires political ads to identify the top 5 funders of the campaign presenting each ad. Bypassing the Oregon Court of Appeals will enable the case to be resolved much sooner. Court of Appeals often takes 1 to 2 years or more to hear and decide complex election law cases. The Oregon Supreme Court, which has a much smaller docket, acts faster. In this case, the Oregon Supreme Court has scheduled oral argument for September.
Do you think it has a chance?
I don't know.
I wouldn't think so. Constitutionally, unless the makeup of the OSC has changed over the last few years, which I don't think it has greatly, a couple seats maybe. Constitutionally, it seems that when limits on contributions come up, they're found to not comply with our state constitution. But I don't know enough of the particulars of the case other than it's a $500 ceiling on individual donors or political action committees that you could give to any one candidate for county office. But a limit is a limit, and I'm not sure. I don't know that the nature of the limits is going to have an impact on the constitutionality of the measure, but we shall see.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when we talk about political ads, I was traveling quite a bit in leading up to November's election this past November. And when I was in Minneapolis, as an example, and watching political ads, it was difficult to tell which party had put forth the ad. It was the same, ominous music behind in the background. It was the same sort of talking points. And so the idea that we have more clarity and transparency in political ads to identify the top 5 funders of a particular campaign that's presenting an ad, that seems like more critical than ever.
Right. I think that part might well survive. Actually, the transparency has always been something sort of separate or kind of paired with the notion of your freedom to contribute is tied to the fact that it's a public act. So to speak. One thing I guess that does make me curious is why they've expedited the hearing. If this was just another run of the mill, no, you can't limit campaign contributions. Why would they bother? So there must be something that's specifically interesting to the court about this one that makes them take it up. In other news of the state, big corporations are moving their profits offshore, and it is costing Oregon as much as $175 million a year. Offshore dodges by multinational corporations are costing Oregon $175 million per year, according to a newly released study. Offshoring profits cost the states nationally a collective $17 billion a year, and hundreds of American companies have invested at least $2.6 trillion of their domestic profits overseas. We have 2 big companies in our state, Intel and Nike. They both partake in the offshore tax haven strategy. Estimates say Intel has moved $46 billion in profits overseas, while Nike has moved $12.2 billion offshore. And that is money that they're not paying taxes on, and we are not enjoying the benefits of. Nike said in a statement, quote, Nike has invested deeply in Oregon and contributes substantially to the state's economy, end quote. Regulators in Europe aren't convinced Nike's paying enough. The EU disclosed last week it is investigating the legality of tax shelters Nike used in the Netherlands. Moving forward, worldwide reporting is requiring companies to report their total global profits and the portion of that overall business done in a given jurisdiction. I'm all for Nike and Intel ponying up their fair share, and other companies like Comcast, who in some estimates are receiving multi-million-dollar rebates at the end of the year, despite showing large profits nationally, which certainly would be reflected in Oregon as well, I would think.
Yeah. Story about the power of local government. Astoria Council approves water sewer bill waiver for federal employees. The Astoria City Council has unanimously voted to offer a water and sewer bill waiver to furloughed federal workers. Furloughed workers now can defer water and sewer bill payments until after the government shutdown has ended and they receive back pay. They will then have to cover their outstanding bill balance. Coast Guard members make up most of the population of federal workers in the port town of Astoria, according to Mayor Bruce Jones. Jones said, quote, we're a town of just under 10,000, and we have over 500 active duty members of the U.S. Coast Guard in Astoria and the greater area. They're a huge part of our local community and a huge part of our local economy, along with Columbia Memorial Hospital. The Coast Guard is the largest employer in Clatsop County. Community has also rallied to support federal workers by hosting food drives and fundraisers. The Parks Foundation, a nonprofit that supports the city's Parks Department, has also offered free use of recreation facilities. Pacific Power and Northwest Natural Gas have also allowed federal workers to defer payments.
I think that's great. It's a small a small thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it should help quite a bit, I hope. And we're seeing folks come together a lot. Actually, businesses, private businesses, individuals, working to help folks out who literally are having trouble finding ways to eat because food stamps are slated to run out, and options are getting thin.
Mm-hmm.
But let's hope that the weekend brings
new developments.
New developments and good news and tasty weather.
Absolutely.
That's News with Friends, brought to you by Morel Inc. You can find out more at morelinc.biz. X-Ray in the Morning, also supported by our presenting sponsor, Tom Dwyer Automotive. Find out more at tomdwyer.com. Tell us what's up next.
And up next, a new episode of X-Ray in the Morning's personal finance show with host Lillian Kerbake and producer Will Romy. Then Dylan Reif, Caro Moore, and Michael Nackstead of Kickstand Comedy join us in studio with their special guest of the week to discuss local stand-up. Finally, we'll end with a new episode of Minority Retort with host Jason Lamb and his guest actor Dania Oseni of the Portland Center Stage production of Sense and Sensibility.
That sounds great. It is 8 o'clock. You're listening to X-Ray FM at KXRY Portland, KQACHD3 Portland, 107.1 and 91.1 FM. Streaming online everywhere, xray.fm. X-Ray in the Morning, also supported by our presenting sponsor, Tom Dwyer Automotive. Find out more at tomdwyer.com. Oh My Dollar's coming up after the break. Thanks very much, Emily.
Thanks, TJ.
Have a good weekend, y'all.
Thanks, everyone.